Hey, everybody. Welcome back to The Collective. We have another fantastic show for you planned out today. I am stoked. We got Chris here. We got Nick here. We got Fran here. Dean's running a little bit late, so he's going to get mocked relentlessly for that in a little bit. But I cannot wait to get this started. Now, while I am super excited, y'all should be too. Make sure you're doing the things, like the show, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, do all that good stuff. Get your emails whenever we go live, which is, of course, Wednesdays for the Gold Mine and Fridays are The Collective. So, if you have any questions, comments, anything at all, by all means, put them up in the comment section and we will engage those throughout the show. Other than that, let's get some intros out of the way and we can dive right into the convo. So, Chris, you're on top. I'm going to hit you first. 10 to 15 seconds. Who are you? Where you come from? All that good stuff.
Yep. My name's Chris Lee. I'm in Colorado and I'm a former Green Beret and I'm a full-time life and mindset coach.
Bam. Love it. Nick, how about yourself?
Where's the mute? There it is. Hey, guys, great to be here. Spent some two-dimensional FaceTime together. So I'm Nick Lavery. I'm an active duty Green Beret with United States Army Special Forces stationed here at Fort Campbell. So my family and I, we live in Tennessee, but I'll just get this out of the way right now. If you haven't figured it out already, I am originally from Boston, Mass. So we do have a bit of a language accent barrier we all got to work through together here. Fran is already laughing. He already knows, but so strap in and hopefully you can figure out what I'm talking about as we go along here.
That's awesome. I'm glad you brought it up because I would never have known. I really would never have caught it.
Hey everyone, I'm Fran Racioppi. I spent 13 years in the Army, served with these two criminals, Chris and Nick, in the Special Forces for the majority of that time. And I'm also from Boston, although somehow I don't have the luxury of Nick's Dorchester accent that he's got over there. So some days I'm jealous, most of the days I'm not, though. But good Celtics win. I think we need to talk about that, Nick. But I'm also the host of the Jedburgh podcast. Started a couple of years ago and doing a lot of great things. So love to talk about it. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. This is going to be a good one. Sean, how's life in the mountains out there?
Things are great here. I've been looking forward to this conversation for a while just because of the caliber of men that are on the panel. So let's see where this goes.
Yeah, let's dive right into it. So I'm going to ask the hard question right off the bat. This is going to kick into it. What does it mean to you to be a Green Beret? And Nick, I'm going to go with you first. You're right off the top. What do you think?
First thing that comes to mind is the opportunity that we get to have, because I'll speak on behalf of more than just myself with a high degree of confidence that, and there you go. Right on cue, Dean comes in while I'm talking with music playing. Hey, we were already talking. I'm going to keep this G-rated. So we were talking some stuff about you coming in late and messing up the flow, and right on schedule, there you are, as if we planned it this way. I don't know if you guys planned it that way, but it worked out brilliantly if you did. The question was, what does it mean to me to be a Green Beret? And I speak on behalf of myself, but I'm confident when I say we get to work with such a unique caliber of person in a small team environment that is tasked to solve complex problems and to do so in an unconventional manner. So for me, the love of the game that I get to live every time I get to go to work mostly comes at the result of the people that I get to do it alongside of.
Yeah, I totally buy that. Chris, how about you? What are you thinking?
Yeah, I remember when I was even exploring the option of joining the military, Special Forces appealed to me, and primarily because I did want to be part of something that was bigger than myself. And I think Green Berets kind of specialize in that. The capabilities that we have, yes, we are able to do direct action, but I think our bigger mission is to go in and train others so they can do the work, and then being part of that story was very appealing to me when I was first enlisting. So I guess that was a lot of word vomit, but if I could shorten it up, it's like, yeah, being part of something bigger than self was the biggest draw for me.
Love that. Fran, what are your thoughts on this?
On this meaning of life question that you just asked over here?
Yeah,
it's about impact I mean, putting the Green Beret on is one thing, right? It's a piece of cloth that you wear on your head, but it's also a badge of not only distinction, but it bonds you, as Nick said, to others who have gone through the same basic level of training and experiences that you have. And so you're bonded in that forever. But what you're really bonded in is the ability and the desire to create impact. We talk about solving complex challenges. We talk about finding a way to make things happen when everybody else says you can't. This is not an organization of people who try. This is an organization of people who do. It is not an organization of people who look at a challenge and say, well, I don't think there's a way. They find the way. They find the opportunity. Everything is about optimism. And so when you approach it that way, when you approach any challenge with, let me figure out how I can do this, that's what it means to be a Green Beret, because that's what you're being asked to do all over the world, create impact. Sometimes we don't even really know what that impact may be. They may just tell you, hey, you're going to go to this place and make it better. And you'll look at them and you'll go, what does that mean? Make it better. And sometimes the answer you get is, I don't know. It's just pretty crappy there right now. And when you get back here, it needs to be better than it was. And then you got to go out there and figure that out. That's what it means to be a Green Beret.
That is a quite a description. Now, Dean, let's get a quick little blurb on you as well. 10 to 15 seconds, who you are, where you come from, all that stuff. And then, please, what does it mean to you to be a Green Beret?
Yeah. Hey, sorry for the delay. First off, so I'm at a fundraiser right now, and I got caught up in an interview, which I'm extremely grateful for. So I took off sprinting from that to get here. So sorry for interrupting you, Nick. My bad. But yeah. So I'm Dean Goble, CW3 Dean Goble. I'm a 10 Special Forces group, and then I also help manage the Special Forces Foundation on my off time. So I do both of those. Been in SF now since about 2009. So been doing it for a few years. And yeah, does it mean to be a Green Beret? I mean, that can be a very lengthy discussion. But for me, I like to be a little more concise. And to me, it just really comes down to the brotherhood. I love the idea of the people that I work with and the camaraderie behind it all and how we do things and operate. It's just something that you have to experience, and then you just love it. And I love the family aspect of it as well. You know that if you go and speak to another Green Beret, that they're looking out for your best interest, you can trust them, which is a huge thing for me in this world, is being able to call somebody. And I know I can call Chris on the phone 3 a.m. and be like, hey, man, I can't tell you what we're going to do, but I need you for 15 minutes. And he'll just be like, I can't remember the movie, The Town, where he's like, all right, who's driving? And so that type of like relationship that you build with everybody. And personally, I love the ambiguity. Fran hit a little bit. I love the ambiguity behind the organization. I like the idea of just, we don't know what the answer is, but we need you to get there and start figuring it out. And I love those types of challenges, to be able to look outside of a conventional box of, if it's left, then you do this. If it's right, there's nothing like that. It's, hey, you're going there, and who knows what you need to figure out, but you will. And then you propose those and move forward.
I love that. Now, Sean, I know you're not a Green Beret, but I'm sure you've worked with a number of them. So what does it mean for you, looking at it from the outside, to be a Green Beret?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I don't know, because I came up with my answer, which may not be a good answer. I came up with my answer last night, and I didn't intend to create an answer in my head, but it was just at the family dinner table. And when my son said, hey, what's on the podcast tomorrow? And I said, you're not going to believe it. There's freaking 4 mega Green Berets on the show. I'm totally looking forward to it. And one of my sons said, well, who are they? And so I rattled off the names. And my sons don't track what I do on podcasting or on social media. But it turns out they knew each one of you by happenstance. Like, the first person to be talked about was Nick. And it was like, hey, is that the guy who ... And then it kind of worked through each of your own lives in a way, because they've either noticed it on social media through my connection with the podcast or whatever the case is. Anyway, the conversation then morphed into, well, what do they do? What are they about? And so I tried to relay that to them. And as I was relaying it to them, I was kind of forming up my answer to your question, Chance. And so I think it means many things, but what it meant to me at the table last night was, to me, what does it mean to be a Green Beret? I'd like to change the sentence to, what does it mean to know a Green Beret? Because that's how I was feeling in that moment as I was describing it to my son. So what it meant to me was, it's good to know good men like you all, and consider that I have a loose relationship with that caliber of man. And so that's how I referred it to my boys, and that's how I'm going to leave my answer.
I like that. I interestingly enough, I was watching Dean Stott's new show, The Most Dangerous Forces in the World. I can't remember the actual title of it, but I was sitting there with my boys watching it, and I was like, "Hey, I know that guy." And they were like, "What? You know a guy on TV? Oh my God, how do you even do?" I was like, "Oh, I've had him on the podcast a couple of times." They're like, "You're famous!" Oh, and they went into it. It was kind of hilarious. But the reason I posed this question is because for a lot of people out there that don't really know anything about the military or other militaries, all they ever see is the movies. All they ever see is the 12 strong and the um, all of the other Hollywood facsimiles of what the job actually is. And I'm going to go around again because I want to get your guys' further thoughts on this in terms of, I guess, the delta between what people see and what you actually do. Nick, I'm going to come to you first. What do you think?
Yeah, I'd say, I mean, for me, some of that kind of Hollywoodisms is part of the draw. It's the cool guys, the direct action, it's the counterterrorism, and we've done quite a bit of that over the last 2 decades. What I like to highlight with this kind of question is that the overwhelming majority of us, active Green Berets on teams or otherwise, we're humans, and most of us have families. We got spouses, we got kids, and we get up in the morning, we strap it on, we go to work, whether that's to train or in an operational environment, and then in the training realm, we come home, and then you gotta learn, which is easier said than done, how to flip that switch. Whether you got a 10-minute commute or a 60-minute commute during that little window where you're leaving being a team guy and pushing the envelope and grinding and suffering alongside your boys, and then you got to flip into dad mode, into husband mode, spouse mode, whatever. And I think that gets kind of commonly overlooked, especially if you look at it through the lens of John Rambo or John Wayne or whomever Hollywood depiction you have of a soft team guy or a Green Beret specifically. It's most of us have these families, and we're all humans, and we make mistakes, and we have challenges, and we deal with all the struggles of the world as anybody else. We just have a different profession, and it's a unique one that asks a lot of us, demands a lot of us. But at the end of the day, we're human beings with blood and tissue. We have families, we feel emotions, we get things wrong, we make mistakes. So I think that in my opinion is one of the massive disconnects between the Hollywood world and the real world, is that in many ways, in more ways than not, we're like any other guy out there with a job to do and a family to take care of and provide for and serve when we're not at work conducting business.
That is a fantastic answer. Chris, you got any additional points on this?
You keep putting me behind like really good answers, and I got to come up with something to try to measure up. Something I was thinking about is oftentimes we train with conventional forces like regular infantry dudes, and sometimes they ask like, "How do you guys do what you do?" And my last team sergeant, gave the best answer. It's because we have mastered the basics. So like the things that some folks train periodically, we become masters of. And that should be really good news, because that means we're not superhuman. That means we've just put in the reps, and that means anybody can do it. And I think Nick hit it on the head. We are human. We have this like whole other facet of our lives as family men or whatever, and that's a big part of us as well. But I think when you watch movies like Rambo, he appears superhuman, and that's not really what we are. We're just dudes that have put in the reps and done the work necessary to master certain skills. So again, I think that should be encouraging, because that means anybody can do it.
Yeah, I love that. Fran, you got any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, Rambo was a badass, but he never ran out of ammo. Never once did he do a mag change or reload the 50 cal. Okay, and so what does that mean, right? It means it's fake. It's not reality. Okay, and both these guys hit on a couple points here. Number one is there's nothing special about being special forces. Right? Here's what the difference is. Here's what special means in special forces. It means that you do the basics, the foundational work better than everybody else. It means you do it to a higher standard consistently over and over again. And there's a phrase that sits in the back of your head that says, I don't train till I get it right. I train until I can't get it wrong. And once you have that mindset, then you're going to be on a path in anything that you do. Nick, there's this book called Objective Secure. Nick knows it. He may have written it. All right. And what's Nick talking about in that book? He's talking about executing against your goals, putting a process in place and setting a goal, and then being a person who just does the work every single day to a standard. And you don't go home until you hit the standard. Does it mean you're going to hit it absolutely every day? No, probably not. But it means that you identify that, you internalize it, and then you make adjustments. So when you get back tomorrow, you have a higher degree of chance and likelihood to hit that target. And then you hit that target and you find the next objective. That's it. But you do that day in and day out. Tom Brady spoke a couple of weeks ago, or what, last week, 2 weeks ago, and he literally was having this conversation. He could have been an SF guy. That's it. And so it doesn't matter. Why do I say that? Not because I love Tom Brady, I do, but because he's talking about the same thing. So you don't have to be an elite special forces operator to have the mindset. You can be an athlete, you can be a business person, you can be a parent. If you're all of those things, then as Nick was saying, now you got to figure out how they're all going to work together. That's the hard part.
That most definitely is the hard part. Dean, you got any thoughts on this?
Yeah, what I would add is the in Hollywood, it's usually just like John Rambo doing it all, right? But I think people miss the backside support that we get. I mean, like, who got John Rambo the ammo and got him to that location and the resources he needed? And in special forces, we're grateful enough to have a really good support. So it's not just the team that's out there shooting; it's the people in the background there that are shaping the operation, getting you the resources you need. And it's just a collective big team effort that I think that Hollywood misses, probably because of resources and a few other things for sure. But in real life, what made me really successful is the people that were supporting me as myself, and more importantly, my team that was really helping to get at the goal. They would already be thinking of things that we weren't even ahead of. And hey, sir, did you think of this? Do you have these resources here? When you get here, you're going to have this, this, and this. And so that was just absolutely amazing to have that backside support that I sometimes feel that Hollywood doesn't capture.
That is a fantastic point. Sean, you got any thoughts on any of this?
I do. So Rambo came out in 1982, First Blood, and that was the only movie that I ever watched with my dad. So we sat down next to each other in this movie theater, and the next year, I'd join the Army. Now, I knew that I was going to join the Army long before John J. Rambo came along, but that was kind of an important moment for me because it wasn't just a matter of sharing a moment with my dad and then him probably realizing that I was heading off to the Army and it might look like that, which of course it doesn't. But that movie is important. Hollywood is important because it encouraged young guys like me through the John Wayne moments, through all the moments in Hollywood. It wanted me to be kind of like that. And I didn't even understand it at the time. I just wanted a piece of it. And so the delta between Hollywood and real life, for sure there's a delta. But without Hollywood, I think there's a lot of people who wouldn't strive to try to understand what the delta actually is between movie and real. And so when you look at real life, I think there's more Hollywood stories in real life that overarchingly would supersede Hollywood's versions of real life, but those real life stories don't get to be portrayed too much on the big screen, I don't think.
That's an excellent point too, and I do know for a fact that had I not seen a whole lot of Hollywood explosives on the movies before I joined the Army, I would not have been so thrilled with explosives with getting into the Army. Up until, like, if the average person saw a grenade go off, it's kind of anticlimactic the first time you throw a grenade, because in Hollywood, it's massive explosions and fireballs and all these things, and you kind of toss your first one and it's bang, and you're like, oh, well, that was less than what I thought it was. Okay. But, it really piques interest for a lot of people, and I think that's an important point here. I have another question on this. This is a bit of a side note, a bit of a jump from here. But there are special forces units all over the world, right? We have JTF2 represented here from Sean. We have a whole bunch of Green Berets here. We've had people from the SBS. We've had people from SEALs. We've had all the different, a bunch of different communities of special forces. But what differentiates the Green Berets compared to a lot of the other special forces units in the world? Because they're all similar to a degree, but what really separates them? I'm going to start with Fran this time. You're up on top. What do you got?
I have to be careful of this because some people didn't appreciate some comments I made last week about American Special Forces and how I think that they're better than everybody else because of courage. And I stand by that for anybody listening. So outside of that, what is the difference? Look, I'll actually kind of disagree with you a little bit because I do believe that, especially I'm not, and again, I'll talk about the American military specifically, right? Because that's obviously what I'm familiar with. But there's very different mission sets. We have come into a world through the global war on terror, over the last 20 plus years, where due to force requirements, we meshed a lot of what I'll call capabilities or lack of capabilities into this common belief that soft is soft, and just throw soft at the problem, and soft will operate interchangeably. And we actually had these arguments. I mean, and the guys here will attest to that. Especially through like 2010 to 15, 18. You saw a lot of well, just throw soft at it. It doesn't matter who it is. Marines, Green Berets, SEALs, doesn't matter. They're very different mission sets. You are recruited for a different set of character traits. They are looking for different things because your mission is different. If you're a Green Beret, we care about things like integrity. We care about things like humility. All right. Those things are going to sit at the top of the list because we're asking you to do something different. A lot of times we're asking you to go be the only person or one of two or one of three in a country going to report to an ambassador. And when you sit down with an ambassador and the ambassador tells you things like, what are you doing here? You don't answer the question like, you're not read in, I can't tell you, because you'll just get to go home. That's probably the fastest way to go home. There are other organizations out there who their mission is to kick down doors, throw grenades in the room, and shoot anything that moves. Very important mission. They're recruited for a very, very different thing. Okay, because there's a tight level of operational control over those folks. Where we might send Nick to the middle of Africa by himself and tell us to report once a week, and we're not going to think about him. Well, if our job is to blow a door, shoot everything that moves, my span of control is probably going to be my arm length to that person. So I'm looking for something different. Okay, so every organization is looking for something different. So we want to be very specific when we talk about soft, what we're talking about, and who we're talking about, and why we want them. I could go on and on, but I'll leave it at that.
Love that. Nick, you want to jump in on this? What do you got?
Yeah, I'll jump in and I'll kind of break your balls here a little bit for a second, because certainly if you're looking at it from the United States perspective, there's only one special forces. There are multiple special operations, and it's a verbiage, and most people mess it up. Again, Chance, I'm giving you a hard time right now. It's very common. Most don't care. I don't care. But while we're talking about it, I'll just throw that out there. The special operations umbrella is quite broad, and there's many units in there that fall underneath that, one of which is the special forces, which is specific to the Green Berets. Again, it's going to be a common misuse of terms. Oh, look at that. You changed the text. My man. That's what I'm talking about, man. Let's be precise. Well, when we can, let's be precise.
Absolutely.
What, the differentiator, I don't know if there's necessarily one. Fran makes a great point. We are tailor built. And I'll just use kind of the common theme or the common mission set, or most well-recognized one of the Green Berets, and that's unconventional warfare. And that is kind of the overarching umbrella term. And there's other mission sets that can kind of fall underneath that. But I'll use the two words, and it's with and through. Like, that's what differentiates the Green Berets from other special operations units. Now, as Fran also brought up, especially like mid 2000s up to, just recently before we withdrew, you're seeing softs just getting thrown at it. Like, everyone's working bilaterally. Everyone's going to now be working with and through, because that's just the way we do business. And, sometimes that works, sometimes, it doesn't. But the Green Berets are built on purpose to work with and through Indigenous personnel. That's it. And Chris mentioned this earlier as well, that while we can kick down doors and shoot bad guys in the face all day long, we are teachers, we're advisors, we are force multipliers, meaning that you take a 12-man team, you drop them anywhere on the planet to be able to operate almost entirely self-sufficiently, and then we will create a much larger fighting force to then lead, and then again transitioning to be next to and then behind a much larger fighting force into combat. So that's why we're built. And it's one thing to be able to do something pretty good. It's something entirely different to be able to teach something pretty good. So it does require a different capability, which is something that even at SFAS, even at our selection course, these are character traits and personality traits that the cadre down there are charged to begin assessing on individuals from day one. Yeah, you need to be able to run fast and be strong and be physically capable and have leadership capabilities. But if you're massively missing some character traits that will enable you to have the intelligence and integrity and character to be able to absorb something and then operate self-sufficiently with little guidance and then employ those skills onto others, you're probably not going to do well in this unit, because that's really what we're built to do.
Love that. Dean, you got any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, what I would add too is the first thing that comes to my mind is building the boat before the rain. That's what special forces that I think makes us different than other special operations groups, is the fact that we focus on the problem set before it's a problem. So solutions are built before they're actually needed. And that obviously takes time and resources. Ukraine's a good example. The fighting force you see in Ukraine, do you think that was just built overnight? Or was special forces working in Ukraine for quite a while now, and then they had a pretty built force that was able to resist, Russian incursion? So obviously you can see where my opinion lies in that, but adding to the points that both Fran and Nick brought up already, I would say that's what I'd add too, is the focus on building the boat before the rain.
Yeah, absolutely. Chris, thoughts on this?
When I was on my last team, Group Sergeant Major came in and just sat down in our team room and just started chatting with us. And he said something that really stuck to me. And it was, Green Berets are selected from the neck up. And I liked that because you can train anybody to be fast or strong, but you have to have something a little bit different to operate I think in this community. And I immediately went to like Robin Sage, and one of the scariest terms you can hear at Robin Sage is like the end of the Q course, your final field training exercise, where you're inserted and working alongside a quote unquote guerrilla force. And one of the scariest terms you can hear from cadre is catastrophic loss of rapport. And if you think about it, it's like, all right, we're soldiers. We should be good at shooting and taking down an enemy. But now I have to worry about maintaining friendships with these strangers that I just met. And that has to become a focus as well. That's interesting. And I think it's unique to Green Berets specifically. Learning how to develop trusting relationships with people that are from different cultures and from different backgrounds and who believe totally differently than you. And it's a skill that needs to be trained well. And sometimes people have a sense of empathy just naturally within them, but throughout the whole Q course, like that's part of the training process, is like learning how to work well with people that are totally different than you, so they trust you, so you can lead them, so you can then back off and let them take over, so I think that's one of the biggest differentiating factors between us and just about anybody else.
I love that, and it's interesting you put that, because I have yet to have a Green Beret struggle in a conversation, whereas I've had other special operations members or former special operations members sometimes get a little bit shaky on the old live conversation here. Sean, you got any thoughts on this?
Just simply, whenever I've thought of Green Berets, I've always considered, if we're talking about the differentiation, there's units that will dominate an area, whether that be a small footprint or a country. Doesn't much matter. The size and shape of what is being dominated isn't relevant to the point. There's units that will dominate an area, and then there's units that will cooperatively and collaboratively own an area. And so it's the difference between dominating and owning. And I feel like the Green Beret task is to own in conjunction with another party that is on the ground at that point. And there's a huge difference, at least in my mind, between dominating a space and owning a space. And I'll leave it at that.
I really like that.
Let me add to that real quick.
Absolutely.
Okay, I would argue, Sean, I think you're right, but I would argue there too that the biggest difference, and we talked about recruiting from the neck up, is really knowing when you have to own a space and when you have to dominate a space. That's the difference, right? Because what we're not saying like, oh, Green Berets can't do this. No, like when it's time to fire for effect and take an area, like we're going to do, and we're going to do to a very high level, and we're going to bring in the resources that will do it. And if we've got to do that by ourselves, we'll do it by ourselves, right? But what you have to know is, when I go into an area, is this me unilaterally? Is this bilaterally? Is there a coalition that has to operate here? Am I partnered with indigenous forces and they're actually going to take the lead and I'm okay sitting in the back seat? So understanding those nuances is what becomes the differentiator. There are other organizations that you can throw into the fight and they're going to do it their way all day long. But that might not be what we're trying to do. And this is important not only in the military, but this is important. This is life. Like if you think you're going to get out, like I know this from my own personal failure, post military. Like if you think you're going to get out and just dominate your battle space when you walk into someone else's company or some other organization, well, you're going to learn a lesson. So those lessons apply to whatever you're doing.
I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Sean.
I appreciate the granularity, because you're right on point. And that's generally how I think of it, buddy. I just failed to add the granularity, so thanks.
Yeah, that's exactly, and it's right where I wanted to go. The next question I have for you here is, how have you integrated the Green Beret into your life, whether that is veteran life or still serving or whatever, but how have you absorbed that Green Beret? I'm going to start with Chris this time. What do you think, buddy?
I think it's multifaceted. That when you become a Green Beret, when you first put on that hat, that now becomes baseline, and the standard to which everything else in your life is measured. The bar is just higher now, and then walking away, like I got out in 22, and now I'm running my own business, and it's weird and comforting. So it's weird because I don't have anybody telling me what to do, which means I'm in charge of everything. But it's comforting because I can rely on the skills I learned in the Army as a Green Beret, to include like discipline and, taking care of the things that need to be taken care of. To me, it's been paramount. And like, whenever somebody talks to me about, hey, I'm thinking about joining the Army, in my head, and I tell them, like, joining the military was the best decision I made in my life, both professionally and personally, because it just set me up for success. Like, I was able to, take care of things financially, etc. But like on a personal level, I learned so many skills that are now applicable for the rest of my life. Um, and you can't put a price tag on that. And so for me, like, becoming a Green Beret, that mindset, it is thoroughly integrated into the rest of my life. And I guess an example would be like, physical training. When you get to a team, if you're not working out every day, you're a piece of garbage, and everyone lets you know. And so, having gotten out, and nobody's on my case about working out or whatever, I still have that like paranoia in my brain of like, I don't want to be the weakest link. Well, I'm the only link in my business right now, so like, but it's thoroughly implanted in my DNA now, of taking care of the things that need to be taken care of, to include mind, body, soul, emotions, everything. And so I think once you put on the hat, like, you can't separate that from the rest of your life whenever you do get out.
That makes total sense. Dean, you got some thoughts on this?
Yeah, mine is definitely my kids, integrating being a Green Beret. While I definitely don't let being a Green Beret define who I am as a person, but my two greatest accomplishments in life are both my sons. So I take all the lessons I've learned from my years and experience of becoming a Green Beret, and I try to pass those lessons on to my kiddos. And so, one's striving to be a professional bodybuilder these days and is absolutely crushing it. He's a complete meathead. My other one, since the day he was born, all he wanted to be was a sniper. So, but teaching them a lot of the characteristics I think that comes along with being a Green Beret, humility, being able to build rapport, being able to relate with people, the intelligence that comes along by studying and understanding and learning different cultures and aspects is something that exploring the whole world. I've been around the world a couple of times, and being able to learn from other cultures on how they operate and understand different problem sets. While I don't necessarily agree with all of it all the time, there are just specific things that just has always stuck with me. And so I try to take those life lessons from being a Green Beret and then apply them to my kids to kind of help them, mature into young men these days.
I really like that. Fran, you got any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think what I take away, I think you take a lot away from kind of like I'll call it post dawning the Green Beret, but I always think back to like the preparation and what it takes to actually earn the Green Beret, because that you have to. It's an individual task. I mean, yes, there's a lot of collective things that have to happen in order for you to get there, and earning your Green Beret just gets you a seat at the table. But the reason why I say that is because the standard that you have to hold yourself to in order just to get there, if I'm constantly reminding myself of that standard, and I'm constantly saying that in order to do this, number one, to get there, and then number two, to every day wake up, put this beret on my head and go to work, I had to be at a certain level, at a certain standard, that every time when it's 11:30, midnight, 1 a.m., and I'm like, I'm not going to do it, I'm going to go to bed, is when I stop myself and I go back in my office and I'm like, what are you doing? You would have never done that before. So go knock it out and get it right. That's what I take.
Yeah, absolutely. Nick, thoughts on this?
Yeah, man. I mean, a few things come to mind. One, as it pertains to my sons, and Dean used this reference. If you don't have a substantial degree of resilience, mental toughness, perseverance, like you're not only are you not going to make it through selection in the Q course, but you're not going to operate well on a team. So now as a still relatively young, inexperienced father, my oldest is 7, my youngest is 3, they're both boys. I'm reminded of the importance of having gone through challenges and suffering prior to me even trying to earn a Green Beret, and then leveraging that capability and those skills to be able to then earn it, and then having to continue to build upon that as the challenges only continue to increase throughout my career. I'm not where I am today without that. So in those little moments of time when, I'm seeing my son like struggle with something, and maybe my first instinct is to like run over there and help him, or be like, hey man, just give me this thing so I can do it real quick so we can get out of here. It's like I'm robbing him of these opportunities to like struggle and suffer through this one little experience. And if you continue to rob our young people, whether they're your kids or not, of hard times and adversity, then you're setting them up for failure, whether they want to become a Green Beret or not. But you rob them of these moments to build the resilience muscle, to flex the resilience muscle, to build the resilience skill. So I'm reminded of that daily as a father. And then the other thing that comes to mind is, like we talked about already, Green Berets, we're in the relationship business. That's it. We're in the influence business. Catastrophic loss report. It's like an odd thing to be like, this means success or failure. And yeah, it could be. So the ability to foster, maintain, and then guide a relationship, which is of course translatable to regardless of whatever you want to do. I mean, look at the people on this panel. We got podcast hosts, we got people running nonprofits, we've got a life coach. Like they're leveraging their abilities within the relationship and influence business to do the things that they're doing right now, which is great. So I draw from that as it pertains to me as an entrepreneur and as a father and as a spouse. And it's not so much the in-your-face aggressive character traits and attributes that I do believe in and that are also requirements. It's some of the softer skills that are required to be, somewhat of a master of influence. And it's things like humility, it's compassion, it's empathy, it's patience. If you don't have these kind of softer skills, it's going to be really hard to foster, maintain, and guide any relationship, regardless of the desired end state. Those things took me a while into my career as a Green Beret to even begin to recognize the value of those things. When I showed up, it was as long as I'm big, strong, fast, and aggressive with a high degree of discipline, like I'm going to be an asset. And yeah, that can get you quite a bit of ways, but certainly when you begin to elevate into more leadership positions, like you've got to be more well-rounded than that, as we've kind of been talking about. You have to be able to bring more to the table than physical capability and a tight shot group. And those other kind of intangible, softer skills in terms of relationship development, maintenance, and influence and inspiring others to be able to do something are things that I've learned over my career that I now leverage in whether it's in my personal business and certainly in my family life.
I love that. Sean, I know you got a tan beret, but same question goes to you.
And it came from a Green Beret. So, and I think there's something that I was thinking about as I was listening to the fellas. And of course, I track all of them on social media. And looking at the panel, they've all integrated the Green Beret into their lives. But I'm not sure how much each one of the guests on the panel understands the totality of how much they've integrated that into their life. And I, listening to the guys, it seems that they've all reflected on it. They're all deeply thinking about it. They're all identifying things that translate directly into their life. But I'm not suggesting that they have a blind spot. I'm throwing this out to a general audience who's listening right now, that you only integrate as much into your life as the time that you spend reflecting on your life. And so reflection isn't just a singular thing. You don't just sit down and think about what it means to be a Green Beret in your life by yourself. You can also sit down and talk about it with others, and not just other Green Berets. And I don't want to use the term normies, but if you walk into a grocery store and you're talking to a cool person and they start asking you questions like this, these are awesome opportunities for you to start reflecting on what it means. And I don't think enough guys take the time to sit down either with themselves or with some like-minded people or with some disparate minds that maybe don't agree with everything that you're all about. Contextualizing what you've accomplished in life, contextualizing who you are at your core is so important that you just shouldn't do it by yourself. You should look around to sit down with people who perhaps you don't agree with, to see what they see in you. Because you see what you see, and you know what you know. But we all know we've got blind spots. So look for a way to integrate what you've accomplished in your life through a different lens, through a disparate mindset that might expose some things that you weren't aware of.
I like where this is going. I saw everybody nodding your head as Sean was talking about. So let's go around the table again. What are you guys' thoughts on how Sean put that? I'm going to go with Nick first. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's brilliantly stated, and I think Fran mentioned this prior, where if you have this assumption that you're just going to show up on day one and just dominate an environment because you're you and you've got this green hat on your head, and the cool guy equipment and the Velcro and the Copenhagen, like you're going to lose. So the degree of self-awareness that's necessary and humility and honesty about where you're at, your current blind spots, the operational environment that you're walking into, go into that, whether it's a difficult conversation with your spouse or into an unknown combat environment in Syria, like whatever the dynamic is, whatever the environment is, but knowing what it is, he's having an idea of what it is, but then being able to assimilate to that, to then be able to garner the support and the ear and the attention of the audience. And then you can begin negotiating it. Then you can begin influencing it. But I don't think that happens without internal reflection as an individual, hard, candid internal reflection as a team, and then doing the pre-work, the advanced work of knowing what's about to come down the pipe, to then be able to mold yourself around that, to be able to get in, and then you can start creating the effects externally.
Beautifully put. Dean, you were nodding pretty hard. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh no, I mean, I was just nodding. Yeah, both Nick and Sean, great question. Nick was spot on, so I completely agree with that. But I would just simply add that, I get the opportunity. I'm grateful to kind of help a lot of guys transition, from the military, get the phone call of, hey, I'm getting out in a few months. Like, I'm going to go talk to these businesses, and, kind of leveraging off what Nick said, you go in there and, we're our own little cult to some degree. And, being a Green Beret is badass and awesome, amazing. But a lot of these people, they're like, that's cool. What can you do? And so it really should humble you real quick if you're already not at that position. But it's a good reminder that not everybody knows and appreciates what a Green Beret is. So go in there with a humble attitude, with the ability to learn. And I like what Sean said of just kind of push yourself a little bit. Get around some people who aren't like, hey, I know exactly what you guys do and your purpose and et cetera, et cetera. Get yourself around some people who are just like, yeah, I know what the Army is, sure. And then watch yourself grow and have to work in that dynamic in that one. I mean, it's much easier said than done, because before you'll be at some conventions, talking to a bunch of nerds, and I love nerds. I'm a nerd, but, and you'll just be like, you're two completely different type of people. And they're just like, can you nunchuck play people and shit? And I was like, absolutely not, so that's kind of what comes to my mind, is just like, yeah, definitely get yourself out there. And I couldn't stress that enough. Just get out there and put yourself in some positions that are a little bit awkward for you. Break away from the norm of speaking to people that know you and you're all part of the same type of group, and then get yourself in front of some people who do not. And I think that, personally, that helped me grow so much as a Green Beret, is now starting to understand how other people look at us, rather than all the friends that I know that pretty much agree with everything I say, because we're all cut from the same cloth.
Yeah, absolutely love that. Chris, thoughts on this?
Yeah. I think something that I would argue all of us have in common are we are constantly assuming there's room for improvement in all areas of our lives. And I know personally that came from being on the teams where I'm looking around at such high caliber dudes all the time. It pushed me to seek out those areas of weakness and seek out those areas where maybe I'm struggling a little bit, and work to improve them. And the teams for sure kind of forged that, but I think the Q course was a good training ground, because you're constantly receiving feedback from cadre of like, hey, you are not doing this well, do better. And I think being able to receive that kind of information, like, hey, these are areas you can improve on, being able to receive that well and not get defensive about it is a really cool skill to have, because now, like, my business now is totally different than what it was in the Army. And so I'm like, I don't know what I don't know. And so when I seek out perspective for somebody else that's been doing it for a while, like, hey, where can I improve? I don't want the kind of fluffy answer like, oh no, you're doing great. No, I want you to tell me, like, give me some real feedback of areas I can improve. Because again, in my brain, I'm always assuming there's areas of improvement that I should be seeking out to strengthen. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, that makes that perfect sense. Fran, I'm going to come to you here in a second, but I know Nick's got a hard timing, so I wanted to give him an opportunity. Do you have any final thoughts or anything like that before you got to jump out of here?
Yeah, man. Thanks, Chance. I appreciate it. Sorry, I got to cut this a little short, guys. But first off, thanks for having me on and spending some time with Dan, Chris, Fran. We obviously know each other. We're around each other quite a bit, but it's always a pleasure to get the chance. You know, the one thought I have that I'll close here with, and I'm sure you got a lot of military listeners and audience that's out there listening right now or will. And I had a conversation just a couple weeks ago, and this has been a recurring theme. And I was at an event, and younger type dude, maybe early mid-20s, comes up to me, and he's like, "Hey, I served in the Army as well." I'm like, "Awesome, man! Like, thank you for your service. What'd you do?" And his response to me was, "Well, I was just a mechanic." And I've heard that, the use of the word "just" in that exact context many, many, many times. And every time I hear that, I want to smack the person that just told me. And I think I may have even said that to this kid. I was like, "Listen, dude, I'm really trying hard right now not to hurt you. Out of love, I don't want to actually hurt you. It's out of love, but like, what do you mean you were just a mechanic? Walk me through what's going on in your mind right now, for real." And there's like a line. I'm doing like a book signing. Everything is stopping right now. We're going to address this, me and you, right here, right now. What's going on in your mind right now? Why would you say it that way? And he's like, "Well, you're a Green Beret." And I'm like, "So?" My response was, "So? That's it?" And he's like, "Well," and now he's uncomfortable, and I'm 6'6", tatted up, staring down at this kid. So I got it. So I'm like, "Okay, listen, bro. Listen. First off, I love you. Second off, I do thank you for your service authentically. And third, don't ever compare yourself negatively to anybody else anywhere ever. I don't care what they do. If you've got me as a Green Beret on some pedestal, dismantle that belief system right now." Okay. And, I think Chris mentioned this earlier, or it might've been Dean, talking about, all the other assets that go into being able to make us successful, do what we do. Like, we all play a role. Forget better, worse, who cares? Like, those are comparative terms. Could I be a better shooter than you? Yeah, possibly. But you know what? We got support guys. We have 88 mic truck drivers that compete in 3-gun competitions every week that would outshoot me lights up.
I think we might have lost him. That's the way to make an exit right there. You're muted though, Sean.
I thought that was me for a second. I was like, "Uh-oh."
Come on. I mean, he ended it with a wicked pose, though.
Yeah,
Hey?
he did. Yeah, look at that flex right there.
Yeah, take a screenshot for God's sakes.
Yeah, he is a very large man.
Dude,
I'm not a,
and I'm like backing up right now.
I'm not a small guy. I'm like 5'10", 220, and I was standing next to Nick, and I was like, "Well, I am
we're all
tiny."
scared.
Yeah. That's why I'm leaving it up there. It's just too perfect. All right. Well, I'll unfortunately, I think he might be frozen there. I'll have to boot him out here in a second, but that's fantastic. It's a beautiful way to do it. So I don't know if he can hear us or not, but Nick, really appreciate you joining us.
His exit was way better than me leaving.
That's probably the best exit I've seen.
There will never be a better exit.
I don't think so. No, that was fantastic. Now back to Fran after all of that. Any thoughts on the concept of maintaining relationships with like disparate ideologies? Let's put it that way. Fran.
Yeah, let me just take a second on Nick since he left and can't defend himself. Or tell me to stop. First of all, if you don't know Nick and you want to get perspective on Nick, you need to go to the Jedberg podcast Instagram page and just scroll down to the picture of him and I next to each other. And I'm like 6'3", 220, and I'm a child in this photo. Like, literally man versus child. And this was taken like 6 months ago. So that'll give you some perspective on it. Secondly, for all those listening, if you haven't had a chance to check out his book, Objective Secure, then I highly recommend you go do that, because that will talk about some of the foundational things that elite performers using whatever it is that they're doing. And so it's very, very good. And if you listen to the audio version, you get to listen to his Boston accent the whole time. So it's really entertaining. But that's one of our best right there. And so we joke about his exit, but that's absolutely one of our best that's ever served in this regiment. Couldn't speak more highly of him. Secondly, to answer your question,
Hold on a second, Fran.
yeah.
Just no, never mind. He was here for a second in the background and they disappeared.
Okay.
He ran away. So he couldn't handle the heat. Go ahead.
To answer your question, what we're talking about is humility. And I think, when we talk about, people will say, well, how are you humble? How do you be humble? How do you display humility? Well, I believe that in order to display humility, you've got to have what everyone else is also talking about, which is curiosity. You have to have genuine curiosity, because the day that when you're curious, when you're asking questions, when we're thinking about, like, how can I do it better? Is there a better way to do it? Well, now you're questioning, are you doing it right? Could there be a better way? Was I the best that I could be? And when we define humility, the definition of humility is literally all about, like, being honest with ourselves, asking ourselves if there's a better way, understanding that there might be a different way to do things, and our way is not always the best way or the right answer. But the only way that we can display humility is if we have curiosity. And the day that we stop being curious, and it doesn't have to be in our life, it can be in a microcosm, it can be about one thing. But then we're no longer going to demonstrate, honestly, humility if we think if we think we're the only, that it can't be done any other way. If we stop asking questions. And we do that as special operators. We do that as in special forces. But I'll also tell you that one of the best displays, to give some props to someone else here outside of the community, one of the best displays of humility and curiosity I've ever seen is my co-host for a lot of our episodes, Jesse Graff. And Jesse is a stunt woman, Ninja Warrior, elite athlete. It doesn't matter what athletic event we've gone to, okay, where she's as equally as fit and capable of everybody there, and she is honestly asking every person how they do things. And saying, well, this is how I do it, but how do you do it? Because she's looking for different ways. She's looking for other ways to do things, better methods. And I watched that time and time again, and it just reinforces, like, man, if you're curious, like, you will continue to grow, and you will demonstrate humility, not to demonstrate humility because it's the right thing to do, but because that's what it takes to grow. That's what it takes to operate at a high level.
You are 100% correct. Now I got Nick in the background here. He's back. He's with us. If you wanted to finish your thought or just say,
Yeah,
peace
will
out
do.
before
Sorry,
the-
guys. I randomly cut out as I was talking about
It was
physically
beautiful.
assaulting somebody. So
It was
maybe not
beautiful.
the great ending. So I appreciate you giving me 10 more seconds to round out this thought. But the entire point is, if you've decided to serve in this United States military, whether you're currently doing it or you did, you are amongst the 0.5% of the society. And I don't care what you did or what you do. When you represent something much bigger than yourself, none of us are able to function without the job that you do or you did. So head up, chest up, be proud. If you're currently still in the game, going to work every day, working your ass off, knowing that the work that me and my colleagues here do or have done doesn't happen without the work that you do. And yeah, if you want to push yourself to another level, if you want to try something different and you want to come over here and give this a shot, the opportunity obviously exists. But this whole I just did this or I just do that is something that I never want to hear in anybody's mouth ever again, especially not to my face, because then I may actually hurt somebody. So that's the point I want to leave with those that are currently serving, those that did serve. And lastly, again, guys, thanks for the time. Sorry I got to cut out short. I love you guys all. Stay lethal out there, and I'm sure our paths will cross. So I'll see you guys soon. Thanks.
Awesome. We'll get you on another time as soon as we can. As soon as the schedules line up again, it'll be fantastic. Thanks, brother. And yeah, to his point, I know I used to say that a lot too, was I was just and I had to remove it from my vocabulary. It's not a great way to look at yourself to begin with. Sean, you got any thoughts on Anything that we've said so far?
I do. On the just word, I've been guilty of it myself. In fact, I believe one of the first people to jack me up for it was you, Chance, because
Yeah.
I said, I just served for 13 years. I only served for 13 years. And I mean, that's a totally normal thought, I thought, but it isn't a normal thought in context of the massive group wrapped around us. Because as Nick said, and his point is 100% correct in my opinion, I have had people who've done the same thing, who've stepped up and said, I just dotted. And I don't want to hear it, man. I'm not down with that just word. And so when you corrected me, Chance, it was a good correction. And it ultimately doesn't matter how long you served, who you served with, et cetera, et cetera. The fact remains you crossed the start line of service, and that counts for something in my books, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think it was one of my friends who I served with initially in the engineers, and then they went to the Hill and went to JTF too. I was saying, "Oh yeah, I only served for 8 years. I only did one tour of Afghanistan. I only did so on and so forth." And he was just like, "Only what? Like this is ridiculous. You volunteered to go to war. You went to war, and you served an extra term. There's no just or and in that. That's what you did." And it took me a while to take that on board, but once I did, I started jacking up anybody I heard say that. Same thing when they said, "Oh, I'm a dirty civvy now." And I'm like, "No, you're not. You're a veteran." There's a very big difference in that veteran life changes. It's not the same as your civilian life before the military. Now I got another question for you guys in terms of for the Green Berets especially. This one's a little bit different from what we've been going into though. So I'm going to give you guys a second to really think about it. What is the biggest challenge for the Green Berets in today's environment? What do you guys, when you look out at the world and you see what's going on, what is the biggest challenge for the Green Berets themselves as perhaps an organization and personnel? Dean, I'm going to start with you. What do you think?
Well, that was a big boy question for sure. Man, I'd have to think on that for a second because there's a couple of them. I would say, it's probably no secret now that, the Army and the military at whole is kind of struggling with recruitment problems. So how do we fill the next generation of Green Berets? And so that's definitely something that is a challenge for us because, one of our sayings is, we're not mass produced. And that's absolutely true. You just can't go around and find, like 100 people, you're now Green Berets, send it. There's a vetting process, assessment, selection, going through tons of training to ensure that we have the right person that dons the Green Beret. And so being able to find that next generation is definitely vital, but being able to completely fulfill those requirements because the world issues aren't going away. I mean, it's not like, we're not in every single continent still speak today and working. However, we are getting smaller, and sometimes that's not necessarily a bad thing to create a little more efficiency. But we definitely need to look at the future generation. Now the guys that I do see coming in are absolutely amazing. I mean, they're light years ahead of what I was when I came in brand new. I mean, they're over there power cleaning 225 for their warm up, and I'm like, what's it? So I mean, just they're physically fit. They just kind of, they don't have a whole lot of experience yet, which is understandable. However, there's just not very many of them. I don't know if in my own humble opinion, I don't know if the willingness and wanting to serve is as hungry as it was when I was their age. Obviously right after, I graduated high school a couple years right after 9/11. So, my grandparents or my grandfather and stuff were heavily in the military. So that kind of really inspired me to want to be able to, support my country in the best way I could. And I don't know if that same vibe or connection still exists today. And that is among a few bigger challenges that we have as being Green Berets in today's environment is how do we get Green Berets to those environments to be able to operate?
Yeah, that's a struggle for I think everybody out there right now. Chris, you got any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I think Dean hit it on the head. Particularly some of the conversations I've had with kids considering the military and stuff like that. They're like, well, the war's over. Like, is it worth it? Like, should I enlist? And so I hear a little bit of that sentiment. And like I said, I think Dean hit it on the head, that this desire to volunteer for service is maybe not as heavy as it used to be. And I use those words on purpose. It is volunteering to serve. If I think if folks are looking for only personal gain, they're in the wrong business. Military service is service to others. So I think that's something to keep in mind. But yeah, to Dean's point, you can't mass produce special operations, whether Green Beret or any. And the famous song is, 100 men tried that day and only 3 got the Green Beret, right? I mean, the numbers might be a little skewed, but I mean, it's pretty close. Like when you take into account selection and then the Q course, like the Q course was like 3 years long for me because of all the other medical training and stuff like that. And that is a marathon to show up every day to keep trying to achieve this thing that you're striving for. And it isn't something you can speed through. Again, like Dean said, the whole process, the selection, the Q course, it is on purpose to ensure that you're getting the right person for the job that is specific to special forces. And so, yeah, I think that is the biggest challenge, is finding the right people to take over after we're gone. So yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Fran, any thoughts on this?
Yes. Can I have to, I got a shameless plug here for a second. So I had the opportunity, we're in the midst really of a very long series on national security. And that has allowed us to go down to Fort Liberty, Fort Bragg, whatever you want to call it, and sit down with the leadership of Special Forces Command. So first episode there was with General Beaupere and Sergeant Major Strong, who are the commander and sergeant major of the Special Warfare Center and School, so the proponent of the School for Developing Green Berets. Then we had and all Army Soft. And then we had the chance to sit down with Dave Lucas and Sergeant Major Matt Williams, Medal of Honor recipient from Afghanistan, who run 4th Battalion SWIC, which is the MOS phase of the Q course, which is where you learn your actual job as a 18 series special as Green Beret. And then we've got an episode that dropped shortly before we hopped on this call with Green Beret and Florida Congressman Mike Waltz. Where we talked about this. We're going to have the senior warrant, the command chief warrant officer for SWIC, Gary Ostrander, is going to be next week. And then the week after that, we're going to have an episode with General Ferguson, who's the commander of 1st Special Forces Command. So all of the, basically all the operational groups, all the Special Forces groups, and PSYOPs and civil affairs fall under him. And then we've got, and then we're going to talk to General Votel, who was the SOCOM commander and the CENTCOM commander, and we also have the Sergeant Major of the Army, who Sergeant Major Mike Weimer is an SF guy. And then we're going to get into the D-Day series, and we're going to keep talking to a bunch of other leaders like General Braga, the SOCOM commander, and a few others. So why do I say all that? I say all that, one, so you go watch Jennifer podcast and you see all this, but number two, because this is what we're talking about. This is exactly what we're talking about. From each of these perspectives, what is it that is the challenge today? What is the next battlefield? Everybody here has mentioned, a number of different things. Okay, so we've talked about the Army's directive to reduce soft forces, primarily. And what is that? Is that the enablers? Is that civil affairs, PSYOPs? Nick talked about the mechanics. Okay, is it the green hatters or the green berets? It doesn't matter which side of that is. Any way in which you reduce the force is going to have operational effect. We talk a lot about the mission. What's the mission? Okay, well, for a long time, soft carried the weight in the global war on terror for a long time. So you needed high numbers. Well, now the Army says, hey, we're shifting to conventional warfare. We're putting money into field artillery, long range fires, missiles, guidance systems. We're working collaboratively in the joint environment with the Air Force and the Navy. And we don't need you, SOF, as much because we have limited resources, right? We got a budget, and that budget has to go in to support joint fires, long range maneuver. And SOCOM and USASOC are saying, whoa, 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 who's going to direct your fires? Who's your deep strike capability? If you reduce our forces, who's going to go in there and paint the targets? Who's going to develop the environment? Who's going to conduct the psychological operations? Who's going to do the human intelligence collection if we don't have these capabilities? Who's going to do all those things called left of bang, right? Bang being the start of open conflict. Who's going to do all those things that actually never allow peer-to-peer conflict to actually occur? Because what does SOF do? SOF, Army Special Forces, let's be specific, actually, their core mission, as we've talked about here, is not direct action, kick the door down, throw in a grenade, shoot anything that moves. Their job is to operate prior to open warfare, open conflict. For what? Why? So that we never have open conflict. No one wants to go to war with the Chinese. The worst thing that's going to happen is the U.S. Navy versus the Chinese Navy. We don't want that. So how do we do that? We build SOF up and we deploy SOF to fight proxy warfare, just like we see in the Middle East against Iran, because if we're enabling our partners, Israel, other Middle Eastern countries, to fight Hamas and Hezbollah, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, well, now we never go head-to-head with Iran. Because everybody knows, whether you're American or Chinese or Iranian or Russian or whatever, that that's a bad day. So, what's the future of SOF? To your question, right? Well, I told General Beaupere, and he told me I was entitled to my opinion, which I think was his political correct answer. I think now's the time where you double down on SOF. You figure out what's the maximum capacity that we can push through and resource, because now is the time that we need to prevent the big fight. Why? Because technology has leveled the battlefield. Okay? Technology has evened the playing field when it comes to open warfare in the peer-to-peer fight, nation state on nation state. There are areas in which the Chinese technology is superior to American technology. So how do we close the gap? Special forces, special operations, more broadly, and people. Better people.
Yeah, love that. Sean, got any thoughts on this?
Well, that's an easy one to build off of, because my prediction, as I've stated in I've stated it in live chats, I've stated it on podcasts, I've written about it on my goofy little IG social media existence. I've specifically written that projecting out using general numbers that are generally accepted by most, not just leading scientists, but the body of scientists out there that are aware of what artificial intelligence is doing right now, it is moving fast. It is moving so fast that 2 to 3 years from now, our world will be quite different. And so I've looked at this problem for the better part of nearly 20 years since I came from that industry to some degree. And we're now at an inflection point. And so if ever there was a time for special operations, for special forces, now is the time. Because the kind of individuals that will be required to deal with the potential problems that we're looking at 3 to 5 years from now, conventional is not the solution for the impending technological warfare that is going to be occurring. When planes can't fly, when power grids don't work, when gas isn't at the gas station, when all of these things that might happen, it'll be a tough nut to crack for conventional. It will be an easier nut to crack for unconventional. And everyone out there can shrug their shoulders and say, well, we'll deal with it when it shows up. But that'll be too late. And so, as the panel has said, Special Forces, Army Special Forces specifically, gets in front of the problem. And the point was made that one of the challenges for Green Berets right now is encouraging or ensuring that the new generation engages in this important role. And they're not as keen to do it because there's not a big war on the go right now. Holy cronkamole, there's a big war on the go right now. It's just that you're not aware of it. And so the more you read between the lines, the more the war is on the go. And so it's right in front of our noses. And I think maybe the biggest challenge to the Green Berets is not that there isn't a war currently. It's that they're not translating out the freaking bonkers war that is right in front of our nose. As Fran said, as AI will create, as is the way of mankind, things will go sideways in the very near future. And that is the message I believe Green Berets should be pushing out. Maybe not on big posters, but that should be the message that's being passed out to the troops right now.
That would make for an interesting poster. The world is going sideways. Join the Green Beret. It would be a bit. It might work though. Who knows? Like it could.
That sounds like a YouTube thumbnail.
It does, doesn't it? It really does. That would work out quite well. Dean, you got any additional thoughts on any of this?
No, man, I think we crushed that one. I mean, yeah, I agree with all, like I already said it, build the boat before the rain, not to get all biblical. And to Sean's point, I mean, the whole soft cyber triad, hit us like a right hook from Mike Tyson. So it was just when, us catching up with technology, advantages and leveling the playing field and working through a lot of those, it's definitely something that we are getting there and in a hurry. But yeah, to Fran's point, I would say the exact same thing to Joe. I think now is the time more than ever to involve or invest in unconventional assets because of the way that warfare, in my humble opinion, will be fought in the near future. I don't think the days of, standing front to front with a couple of muskets and one people shoot and the other one shoot, while it's absolutely important to some degree, I just think that what you can do, especially, a lot of people, I believe that money completely drives the world. And so if you look at cost efficiency of what you can do with a 12-man team to create effects, you can do that on, pennies on the dollar compared to shooting some Excalibur 5000X from an artillery round. While that's absolutely cool to watch and do because I love that shit. However, you may be able to achieve the same thing with a guy who just walks up to something and turns a wrench 3 ways the other direction, and then the train amps doesn't actually make it there anymore. Just food for thought.
Yeah, it's a great points. Chris, you got any additional thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think all these guys hit it on the head, and I think the best move would be to double down on soft special forces specifically, because warfare is with people, and that's our job, is to work with people. And yeah, ideally it would be to prevent the big war, because nobody wants that. That is indeed a bad day.
Yeah. Fran, you got any?
I do have to jump in front of Fran before he hits us with another shameless plug.
Yep.
I'm actually gonna plug his shameless plug because of course I track what Fran does and have ever since he's first been on a guest on the podcast, and that's been a number of shows now that Fran has willingly and graciously given up his time, his personal time, for $0 to come on over here and shed his wisdom. And through his practice, through his efforts, we've got to meet a bunch of cool people. And, Fran is one representation of each dude on this panel that I've come to really appreciate as a good human being. And so I have watched all of the clips that Fran has put up on his social media. I've watched all of the clips that he listed there that are available. I really love it, man, because it gives a side of the Army, it gives a side of operators that the general public doesn't get much access to. I mean, it's intelligent, it's intellectual, it is meaningful, and it cuts to the point of what each man is trying to represent in his own way on their own service journey. So, Fran, your shameless plug, it gets to stay because it's freaking legit, man. What you're doing is righteous, and I just wish that other people would pick up what you're putting down. And I don't mean just listen to what you've got to say, but I mean try to replicate what you're doing. Try to replicate the dissemination of good information, the dissemination of encouraging others to step into a lifestyle that is of higher purpose. You say all the right things in all of your clips, and the right people will hear it and do the right thing. But I just wish that more people would replicate what you're doing so that it touches other people that don't know about you, or somehow aren't made aware of what you're doing. I'd love to see 10 Frans out there in 10 spots within the country doing their thing virtually, as it were.
Almost like Jedburgh teams kind of all over the country. Ooh, what are you thinking, Fran?
Well, thank you, Sean. I much appreciate all your support and kind words. Yeah, it's truly been a journey over the last couple of years, and continue to just be very with hard work. They say comes luck. But we're putting in a tremendous amount of work into this thing because it is meaningful, and getting that message out, I think, is really critical. And getting that message out in the right way, too, I think is critical. Like you said, we live in a polarizing world right now. Unfortunately, part of that polarization, we've always been, democracy is an ugly thing, right? Mike Waltz will say in the episode that went out today that, in democracy, you got to get it right. You got to get it wrong every way until you actually get it right. But the difference today versus the past, because we've always had political divide, and that's fine. We should have political divide. We should have divide in a lot of conversations that we have. Go on an ODA. Why do you take input from the most junior person before you go out and do something? Because for the same reason we were talking about earlier, you got to have humility. There might be a better way. So you need to take input. The difference between today and what we've seen in the past is the unwillingness to listen to the other side. Now, I don't know if that's a byproduct of, maybe this is a piece for a later day, we got to talk to some sort of clinical psychologist or something but what, I don't know if that is happening because of social media, because of your phone technology. Okay, I don't like what Chance is saying, so I'll just turn him off. And I can do that. I can swipe up, and I don't have to listen to what he's saying. So when you come in the room and we're in the room, I'm just not going to talk to you. Yeah, I mean, we had you guys get on the stage last night, didn't even shake hands. That's never happened. That's never happened. And to me, that's not okay, right? Because you might not like each other. That's fine. In fact, we don't need you to like each other. But we got to be able to have discourse. We've got to be able to talk. We've got to be able to have discussion. Hey, Chris, you don't agree with me. That's cool, man. Let's talk about why. And you know what? Maybe when we leave here, maybe we're not going to agree. You might not convince me. That's cool. But we're still going to talk about it. And maybe if you and I are politicians, maybe I'm going to support you on this year because, I don't really like it, but you need it, and later on down the road, you're going to help me out on another issue, But we don't have that anymore. Now it's you've got to, Dean's got to be wrong for me to be right. And if Dean doesn't agree with me, well, then Dean doesn't exist. That doesn't move any organization forward at all in anything. So you equate a lot in life to sports. Put someone on your team who doesn't pass the ball, doesn't talk to anybody else, goes and sits by themselves, doesn't listen to the coach, what do you do to that player? Who, regardless of how good they are, you kick them off the team.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you hit the nail on the head with the wording of convincing. I think this is the issue that a lot of us struggle with, is that I don't need to convince anybody, right? Like if anybody here disagrees with me on anything, in no way do I need to then convince them of my opinion. It's just my opinion. I'm going to hang on to that, and I might learn something from you. That's cool. But I don't need to be convinced. And yet I see that a lot on social media across the board, of people trying to convince other people of their way of life or their mindset or their whatever it is, versus just living it. And if somebody wants to understand it, then they can come learn. But that's a whole nother thing. Now I have another question for you guys. Unless you guys got some more thoughts on this, Sean.
Yeah.
What do you
It is
got?
another thing.
I want to do
but it's
something
an
real quick
important
after
thing.
Sean.
Okay. Thanks, Dean. It is an important thing, and I'm glad Fran raised it up. And of course, we're not going to dive into that subject area too deeply, but my position, and I've said this to you, Chance, I've said this to a number of people that have hit us up and said, hey, you should have that guy on the podcast. And sometimes I'll just say no, never. And here's why. Because if you're a person who enters into a conversation as a competition rather than a cooperation, I'm not interested. Like, if you've got to win in every single back and forth, if you have to win every sentence, if you need to feel like you win every point, whatever the points are, then you're probably not a cool person to talk to. I don't mind if a person is competitive. I don't mind if a person will, push back. In fact, I don't mind when a person pushes back and makes me feel super uncomfortable. It doesn't happen too often, but I appreciate it. What I don't like is someone who steps up to the plate in the first minute and thinks that they're going to win a conversation. I don't care for it. And so there's a way to have dialogue. A way to have dialogue is, irrespective of what you think of a person, you've got to freaking shake their hand, man. You've got to give them a nod. You've got to recognize them as another human being. You're spending time with them. You might as well try to figure out how to get along rather than to beat their ass. And so there are people that will never be on this podcast until they learn the secret sauce, and that is freaking cooperation rather than competition.
That is a fantastic point. Dean, you got something to add on this?
Not really. I just wanted to inject my own shameless plug and say that Chris Lee, I believe, just wrote a book as well. So we were talking about Nick's, but Chris is yet another phenomenal guy. And I can't remember who said it, but yeah, we definitely need more guys like Fran, Chris, Nick, to kind of help influence the future generations, if you will, to kind of, set the standards of what that looks like. So now that Chris has a book coming out, Fran's probably writing one. I got 500 followers on Instagram. Half of them are my grandmother because she keeps forgetting her account. So I create her a new one and then have her refollow me. So, but on a serious note, though, it is just absolutely amazing. But yeah, definitely check out Chris's book too. I'm looking forward to reading it. I honestly don't even know what it's called yet, but I did see real quickly on a notification that said something about you writing a book. So I'm excited about that. But yeah, that's all I had, Chance. I didn't really want to add to that other conversation.
All good. This is interestingly enough, earlier, Fran, you had said it's a shameless plug, but it's not really. I'm more than happy to have you talk about the Jedburgh podcast, because you guys are doing good things. As Sean said, you guys are kicking ass. You're taking names. You're finding the right people to talk to about the right subjects, and you're bringing up honest, healthy discourse, which is key in all these discussions and everything that we've talked about. This is fantastic. So I am absolutely happy to plug that and Chris's book, because again, awesome dude. I know he's going to put out awesome stuff. This is just fantastic. Now,
okay, but wait, Chris, what is the name of the book?
Oh, there you go. What is the name of the book?
I appreciate it, Dean. Thanks for the plug.
I don't know the name of the book, but I do know that I already said in the green room before we started that I want a piece of that action. I already told the book. I said, put my name on a book.
Yeah. It's called Beyond the Battlefield: A Guide to Conquering Life's Challenges, and it's not full of like military stories. It's really like my philosophy on how to achieve excellence in life. I include some funny stories from the army and stuff like that, and primarily because they were great learning experiences. But the book itself is really my coaching philosophy in 150 pages. Um, so so that's kind of the intent behind it. The title was kind of picked because incidentally I was in the army, and that's kind of how I view things. Is like there's a problem set in front of me, or a battle to navigate, and that takes a plan and some intention, and that's kind of the gist of the book.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to seeing it, man. And you're, as Sean said, he wants a book. I want a book. Everybody's gonna get one of your books. It's gonna be fantastic. We're gonna have our names written in it. Hey, for the collective dudes.
Hey,
What
Chris,
do you
do
got,
you
Sean?
mind if I ask you a specific question? You don't have to go right into the details of it. Maybe you've just got a general answer. Why did you write the book?
Dang good question. What do you got, Chris?
That's an excellent question. First and foremost, it was on my bucket list. I enjoy putting thoughts on paper, and for me, what an honor to be able to put my thoughts on paper and then share it with other people. So that was part of it. Admittedly, I dragged my feet for years, because I'm like, nobody wants to hear what I have to say. And it was actually a conversation with Nick in January. I did a speaking engagement with him, and he was like, "Dude, you should put out a book." And I was like, "All right, I'll do it." And going through that process, like full disclosure, my sleep has been absolute garbage this last week because the book's coming out on Monday, and I can't remember who said it, but I totally relate. It's writing a book is like walking out your front door completely naked. That's how I feel, because it's like, all right, I can't. There is no hiding behind like a screen anymore, or an edit on the TikTok reel that I create. It's like, no, my thoughts are now out in the real world, and people are going to consume it, and then judge me accordingly. And that's admittedly very scary. So long-winded answer to your question, why? Because I always wanted to, and two, because it was really scary, and so I'm excited about it.
Love that. Well, sometimes you just need a poke in the chest. Somebody's got to like, why haven't you done this yet? Like seriously. I know Sean did that to me last year when I told him that I really wanted to do the Nijmegen while I was still in the military, and he was just like, "Well, why haven't you yet?" And I was like, "I don't know. Okay, I guess I got to do it now." And got it done last week. Fran, here's a question for you: why haven't you written a book?
Nobody wants to hear what I have to say.
That's true.
That's true. I don't know. It's come up a few times. Actually, we were just talking about this the other day. My father-in-law asked me why I haven't written a book, and I was just like, I don't know, because I produce a podcast a week. That's quite a lot of work. So who knows? I think I have a framework, but we'll see.
Okay. I'm liking. I'm going to keep bugging you about it down the road, just so you know. Don't worry, that's never going to stop. But
I
I do.
won't stop talking. Don't worry about that. I'll keep talking.
I have no doubt, zero doubt
I
in that.
studied. I remember my degrees in broadcast journalism, not
Okay.
literature or English or any of that. It's in broadcast journalism. So throw a mic in my face and let me know how much time I got to talk to. I'll fill it for you.
Well, I got a perfect idea for you right now. Something that you can stew on is that you could make the Jedberg podcast like coffee table book with all the photos and a little blurb of each episode, and like people could be like,
idea.
ooh, with a little QR code in the corner where they could just watch the video right there. I'm just saying.
That's
Perfect idea for you right there live.
That's a phenomenal idea. 175 episodes. Yeah.
Do you know what? I would buy that book because, well, I'd buy it if you put it together right. And
Well,
no,
we have to
no,
do
hang
that.
on a sec.
That's the way.
There's qualifiers if I'm going to buy your book. If you did it right, and to me, right is this, and this is how I see your podcast. This is how I see you, Fran. This is how I see you producing a product like that. Of course, you could write your own book, but I see you as writing the book for others, and through the eyes of the guests that you've had on your podcast. You know, like you've had a lot of really wise people that you've had a chance to talk about or talk to. And I'd just love like a one pager with an image or of your choice with, you know, like the in quotations wisdom piece that individual has put across. Man, I would buy that all day long. I just don't think there's enough encapsulated wisdom out there that is in a coffee book style. There's tons of freaking dumb memes out on the internet. I mean, who wants to pick up that coffee book? I'd rather have the one that is legit. And so I think it'd be a pretty cool project.
This
There
is
we go.
now you got me thinking. This is a good idea.
That's my entire job, is to make people think. That's everything I do right now. So I'll let you stew on that for a little bit while I ask this question to the panel here. Getting back to, you know, the Green Berets themselves, this is going to be a tricky one, and it coincides with what we were just talking about. But how can the Green Berets do better? Where are they not doing well in this moment right now? So I'm going to start with Chris. What do you think?
I think some of it is from a logistical standpoint, it's the numbers. We need numbers for sure. But I think where you get those numbers is instilling in young people the desire to serve in a story bigger than themselves. And maybe it's social media, maybe it's just like the evolution of our culture. I think that desire to serve something bigger than self has diminished. And I think the best thing for Green Berets is to try to instill in young people that serving a story bigger than self is one of the best things you can do in whatever capacity that looks like. And as a result, you'll get more Green Berets. But again, logistically, we're hurting for numbers. But how do you solve that problem? Well, you gotta inspire people to want to serve somebody else. You know?
Yeah, I like that. Dean, thoughts on this?
First thing that comes to my mind is, 20 years of warfare really got us great at the shoot, move, communicate, more of the DA aspects. But I think what we can do better is understanding the future environment in which we need to operate and kind of go back to our roots. I was talking about the Jedburgh podcast. If you do some research on what Jedburghs did during World War II and stuff, I think while, the global war on terrorism is what it is, and we had to do a lot of things and adapt to make that happen, I would say that we should look more historically on how we used to operate, and we should become a little more adaptable and kind of quit. How am I trying to put this, like, to make it real kind of clean and cut is, don't shooting rifles and shooting people in the face. That's cool if you're shooting the right people. However, there is a specific niche in which Special Forces has. And if you do your research and understand kind of like the Jedburghs and the history and the Special Forces before the global war on terrorism, I think that there's a time now that which we need to kind of get back to that. And that is something we can do better, and that I believe that we should start investing in.
Yeah, I agree with that one. Fran, thoughts on this?
Yeah, we're doing two things not well, but they kind of correlate. Number one, we're not telling the story. We're not telling the right story, and we're just not doing it. We've taken the term quiet professional, and we've turned it into silent professional. And we've said, part A of this, right? I said there's two things. So part A of it is we've said nobody wants to talk about what they did. For whatever reason, right? Because they're like, well, the Green Berets don't talk about this stuff. Then we make fun of SEALs, right? Every SEAL has a book. Everyone has this, right? Well, there's different ways to do it. Okay, like you don't need to be. You can tell your story. Okay, everything you did is not classified. FYI. All right. Um, and you can tell your story and you can tell the lessons and you can talk about what you learned without it being some war story about how cool you were and how many people you ended and how you saved Afghanistan or Iraq. Like probably wasn't just you. FYI, sorry to let you know that. And so it's okay to talk about those lessons. It's okay to talk about what comes from these experiences for all the reasons the guys just said. Number one, we want other people to hear it. Two, it's cathartic to be able to do that, right? And talk about what you did. And it helps other people contextualize the importance of the Special Forces Regiment and what it means to be a Green Beret and why it's needed for all the reasons we talked about a few minutes ago, why it's needed now left of bang more than ever and who we need to go and do that. And the best way to do that is to tell stories. Why do you think Navy SEAL Foundation makes so much, Dean knows this, why do they make so much damn money? Because every SEAL is out there talking about something that they did, and everyone's like, oh my God, that's so cool. I want to give you money. How much do you want? I'll write a check. Okay. And we don't do that. So that's part A. Part B is then we get guys who go out there and do it. And then the rest of us look at them and go, oh, that guy's a piece of shit. He got up there and he started telling his story. He's self-serving. Oh, I can't believe he did that. Oh, he only cares about himself. Navy SEALs go out there, they write a book, it's bad. They don't even like each other. And everybody looks at the other SEALs and they go, that's a good dude. Buy his book. Support him. And we look at each other and we're like, screw that guy. And that's the wrong answer. Because we come from a world where we would take a bullet for the guy next to you and you didn't even like him. And then you get out and that guy goes and does something cool because he's got drive and motivation and passion. And you look at him and go, screw him. Come on. That's not the right answer. So we're not supporting each other. So we're not telling our story and we're not supporting each other.
Yeah.
That's my take.
Yeah, 100%. Sean, you got any thoughts on this?
Yes, I am in line with Fran. I see it as well. It is the slippery slope of quiet professional to silent professional to what you said one word out loud, now you're ostracized. And that's how certain clubs work. And I don't think it's cool either. As I see it, the biggest challenge for Green Berets to do it better, or Green Beret-like characters to do it better, is to tell a better story. You don't have to tell the full story. You just got to tell a better story. A story that encourages others to want to be part of it in the future. Or you'll see recruitment come to a glaring 0 number. The story has got to be not cool. The story has got to be right. Right for the times. Right for the person who's thinking about entering into that trajectory. And by the way, that right story to be told today is different than it was 20 years ago. And so I feel that a lot of the stories out there that are being told are kind of off the mark. They're dated. They're almost like 1970s reporting, if you will. It's not modern. It's not appropriate. It doesn't impact a modern generation because the story is not being told well. Who's telling the story well? Frickin' Fran. In his clips on social media, talking to the right people about the right subjects, the right way that it distills or crystallizes the lessons of the moment, the importance of the subject, the material that is being discussed is done well. It is rare out there that is the case. What else can Green Berets do better? Well, I mean, work together better when you get out, as Fran said. And that applies to all veterans, by the way, not just specific to Green Berets. When a person transitions out of a really, really demanding career like Green Beret into the veteran world, whether where they're now not in a team, where they don't have laser-like purpose, where ... all of these things get left in the rearview mirror. There is a phase there after transition. Unless you've got really good support or you were really clear in what was about to happen, Green Berets will struggle, as will anyone like a Green Beret will struggle if you don't have your transitionary phase figured out and you don't have the right people around you after the fact. And so, Dean is a perfect example of the importance of this subject. So I'm just going to sum up and hand it off to Dean.
Yeah. Dean, what do you got?
No, I mean, if you haven't noticed, I'm wearing a Special Forces, Foundation T-shirt. Fran is wearing a Green Beret Foundation hat, and so I get asked it all the time on, what's your relationship between them, and he's spot on. I never really understood why anybody would have any. If you're helping Green Berets and their families, you're always 100% in my book, no matter what. And it's not like, everybody has to have a slice of pie. There's so much pie that we could never eat it all, even if there was more organizations. So more power to you. So I absolutely do not like when people, and that's where NSW really kind of does it well, is they do pump each other up. And not that, you got to sit there and blow smoke at people and anything, but you should be a supporter, because we do need more people like that. And we do need to always work better together and kind of, move the ball forward, if you will, or whatever, you want to throw in there. But it's always interesting to see some of the haters out there. And quite frankly, I always point them my way. I just say, follow me on Instagram, then that's cool. Just kidding. That's a horrible, shameless plug. But more importantly, though, is just, I think we need haters. I actually kind of like them sometimes. They're pretty hilarious to watch. And I was like, feel free to hate on me. I'm cool with it. I kind of like that. But yeah, there is definitely times where we just got to get past that, because we do need to shape the next generation, and telling the right message to the right people through the right programs, such as the Jedburgh podcast and a few other great ones who do it out there really well, like the Collective. It's awesome to kind of see that. And I don't think people understand the impact that is making, and being able to tell your story. And who was it? Was it you, Sean, that said, quiet professional, silent professional, and then it kind of just goes away. I was kind of guilty of that myself. I was kind of indoctrinated to the point where I absolutely hated, or if I thought I was talking about myself, even to the slightest degree, I would feel a whole thing of shame come over my body. Like, what am I doing here? Oh my God, I'm on a camera. I just did an interview for a local news station here. And I swear to God, the first thing that came to my mind is, oh my God, I'm going to be on the news. Make sure I don't say anything so people don't hate on me for being, since then, I'm slowly getting over that. I'm kind of like, you know what? I'm going to be me. I'm going to help other people the best of my ability. And if you want to hate, you bring it on.
Yeah. Somebody coined it. I think it was in your live, Sean, one of your live, Sean, when somebody coined the word cooperation. And I think that's the key that we need to do it cooperatively, compete with each other, right? Is that if you're in the same space, you got the Green Beret Foundation, you got the Special Forces Foundation, you're in the same space, use that to build each other up rather than knock each other down. It just doesn't make much sense in my mind that there's this. I've seen it in the veteran advocacy world. It is rampant across the board here in Canada of people trying to cut each other down to make themselves look better or to make their organization better and what did you say at the beginning of this year, Sean? It was the year of the collab, right? That's the whole point of this year is we're trying to collaborate with as many people and as many organizations as possible to get the words out, to get the fact that, we're all trying to help each other by pushing each other just a little bit more every day. And, got to push that pace just a little bit, right, Sean? You got any thoughts on this at all, Sean?
I do agree that at the start of the year, I said 2024 is the year of the collab, but I don't want anyone to get it twisted out there. The collab piece is not like to try to make the collective more spotlighty. It was just to try to hang out with cool people so that we can shed the spotlight on them. And our tiny little podcast ain't shining too much spotlight on a bunch of people, but it's better than not. And as far as I'm concerned, as soon as you adopt the attitude, it's the frickin' year of collab, baby. now you're on the right path. You know, if you're telling yourself at the start of 2024, screw them, we're going to win, you're not my cup of tea, as I said, in a conversation or on a podcast. And so collaboration is a tricky thing on social media. And I don't think we've done it as well as we could. And I think we'll make mistakes on it in the future. But it's not for the lack of trying. Centrally to the theme of what we're trying to do is to serve, to help our fellow man, to shed some of the wisdom of the guests that we meet, just like Fran's coffee book that he's going to make, all 175 pages of it. I mean, if he cracks that out of the park, I'll feel like I was a co-author, and somehow that'll raise my attitude, maybe.
Maybe. I think you should make it as like your 200th episode special edition book that comes out bang right afterwards. That'd be a good way to play it. Now we're almost at 2 hours here. I don't have any more questions in terms of the Green Berets or anything like that. Sean, you got any additional questions or thoughts? No? Okay. Then let's get some final thoughts. Anything at all still bubbling in the back of your brains, or anything about the Green Berets that you think needs to be brought up? Chris, I'm going to start with you. What do you think?
I've mentioned this before on this podcast, and if you're a young person and you're pursuing maybe a career in special operations, maybe specifically special forces, understand there's a difference between loving the idea of the job and actually wanting to do the job. I get a lot of messages from folks, and I can tell within a couple sentences of them DMing me which one of those categories they fall into. So understand that you do cool guy stuff, but you have to earn it every single day. So understand that this lifestyle, it costs. So if you're not willing to pay that price, that price is really selfless service and willingness to push yourself in all areas to excellence. If you're not willing to pay that price, keep that in mind. But I think the last little bit, and then I'll kind of shut up, is military service is service to others, and keep that in mind as well. So if you are pursuing any career in the military, you signed up, you volunteer to serve other people. And that's an important attitude and mindset to keep throughout your time in.
Yeah, absolutely. Love that. Dean, any final thoughts?
Yeah, to add to that, it's just, it kind of goes back to the Hollywood question earlier. I don't think people realize that for that one operation that lasts, 4 to 5 hours, there was 6 months of planning and grinding to kind of get to that one single point. So it's not Hollywood. It just doesn't happen, to be able to put in the time and do it for the right reasons makes sense. I'll add to the conversation, that I'm pretty excited about. I got Bob Davis out here that's speaking today here in about an hour for our fundraiser event. If you don't know who he is, he's a retired CW5. He was the USASOC Command Chief Warrant Officer, and absolutely he's out golfing right now, having a great time and everything. But I was actually hoping I could throw him behind on the mic, because the amount of wisdom that guy can drop on you, while Fran, Chris, and I were, still running around in elementary school, he was already at war kicking ass and taking names. And so I just, seeing the kind of wisdom that he's dropped on me for years and stuff is just amazing. But kind of going back to our conversation about, that's kind of the thing I really love about doing, this nonprofit work, is I have the ability to bring in people like that to speak at events. And the majority, there's obviously a few retirees and stuff here, but the majority of them don't know what Special Forces is and what it's all about. And to have somebody like Chief Davis come up really sends a resounding message to, this is who we are and this is what we do. And it educates the population on who it is. But on that note, though, I just, I need to get back to that here any minute. But, Chan, Sean, dude, I truly appreciate the opportunity. It's always great to have the chat. It's always good to see Chris. He's over there. He's probably still lifting 3 times a day and crushing it. Fran, I see all your stuff. That's awesome, too. I love what you're doing with the Green Beret Foundation. It's absolutely amazing. Keep doing what you're doing. Nick's already gone. He's already, he's a superstar now, running around, speaking and shaking hands and kissing babies and threatening kids and mechanics. But yeah, man, it's been absolutely a joy. Thank you so much yet again. And then, I'll stay on for probably a few more minutes. If you guys have any other questions, then I'm going to bounce too.
Raj, absolutely. We'll get this shut down. We can chat in a second here. Fran, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I like I like what was brought up here about volunteering. Okay, I mean, look, this is at the end of the day, that's what this is, and so that means 2 things. It means that you volunteer to serve and define what service means. I think you got to look at that. What does that mean to you? You volunteer, so you volunteer when you go in the Army. You volunteer to go to selection. Assuming you get selected, and you make it through the qualification course, you're going to don that Green Beret. Well, that's not the culmination, that's actually the beginning. And what that means is that every single day you volunteer to do the very best that you can. And some days are going to be better than others. Some days you're going to meet the standard we talk about, other days you're not. And it's what you do in both of those situations, when it goes well and when it doesn't, that defines who you are and determines your ability to continue to wear that Green Beret in service and post service. And so what I take away and what I encourage people to take away and think about when they think about special forces and those who've earned and wear the Green Beret and continue to serve the regiment in whatever capacity that may be in and post service is you've got to live that standard every day and you got to enforce that standard. And if a day goes by where you analyze your day and you didn't meet that standard, well, then you better think about how you're going to wake up tomorrow, because you get another shot at it. But you got to keep that in the back of your mind. So, and the last thing I'll leave you with is don't miss Unknown Heroes. Dean talked a little bit about it, but Unknown Heroes Behind Enemy Lines at D-Day is up on YouTube. So we broadcast it on 200 TV stations across the country and Armed Forces Network. But it is the story of Operation Jedburgh. It is the story of the Green Berets. Where do the Green Berets come from? What is the lineage? What is the history? But the story of Operation Jedburgh started on June 5th, 1944, when 3-man teams parachuted behind enemy lines. So it's in support of the D-Day invasion. So check that out.
Absolutely. That's fantastic. Sean, you got any final thoughts?
Yeah, just real quick, thinking back over the last couple of hours that we've been chatting, I kind of started with the idea that, man, when I was a kid, Green Berets were heroes to me. I was watching John J. Rambo thinking, man, these guys are heroes, et cetera, et cetera. Through my young life, I always held up to some degree the high standard of what it means to be a Green Beret, even though I barely understood it. Well, Fran just used the word culmination. And as I think about the last 2 hours again, the guests are genuinely the culmination of amazing careers, amazing talent, amazing skills that were driven into them, the process, as it were. The life that they've lived has culminated to this very moment. And when I look back on these 2 hours, it's evident to me that the process of becoming a Green Beret, living as a Green Beret, and then perhaps leaving as a veteran Green Beret, the culmination is excellence, highly adaptable, highly capable men. And we surely need more of that in our world. So thank you, boys.
Yeah, I 100% agree to that. I have absolutely nothing to add, so I will shut her down with, again, thank you. Chris, Dean, Fran, and Nick. Can't thank you guys enough for this conversation. It has been absolutely fantastic. I know I have learned a ton. So I'm hoping everybody else out there is enjoying it as well. And I'll end with that. We'll see you all next week as we all continue to learn, build, and grow. Chimo, everybody.
Chimo.